All right, guys, welcome back to the stream. Welcome. If you are new, appreciate you guys joining me today. Kind of short notice, doing my stream a little bit later than I normally would. So I do apologize for that, although it does seem like some people are actually happy about this because it lines up with their schedule a little bit better. But yeah, appreciate you guys joining me today and waiting patiently for the intro to finish up. Yeah, MRPD, I did see that, and I thought it was kind of funny, honestly, the way he kind of subtly responded to the leaks, which, you know, not too surprising. We did cover it, and like I said, I didn't believe it was real. It just didn't seem real to me. You're replaying Death Stranding and you're going to platinum it? Nice. Yeah, that's a platinum trophy I did achieve. Death Stranding. I think it took me over 100 hours or so. Great game. Jerome Montgomery with a $5 super chat. You're saying when they say 2, do they not count the Switch 2 or nah? Because I see PS6 and Switch 2 both doing well next gen. Yeah, we're going to go over that in just a moment, Jerome. They do talk about the Switch. So you will get your clarification in just a moment. But that is one of the topics we're going to talk about today. Probably the main topic. We're also going to be talking about the situation with Helldivers 2 and the Killzone crossover situation because there was quite a bit of controversy. Surprise, surprise, Helldivers 2 and controversy, two things that seemingly can't stay away from one another. But yeah, we're going to talk about how an analyst has come out and given their uh, analysis of next generation, specifically with the console market. And this analyst has come to the conclusion that there is only going to be room for one next generation home console, not counting the Switch 2. So essentially, Xbox, PlayStation, one of them is going to have to go away, essentially, or is going to end up going away. Sim Particle, you're saying the Helldivers Killzone crossover is so good. I was watching some gameplay. I haven't checked it out myself, like, in game, but I was watching some gameplay and it is really cool. Like people seem to be pretty pretty happy with it overall. It's just unfortunate the controversy that came out because of the pricing of it. And I'll probably start with that just because I think it's a pretty important update. So with the Helldivers 2 situation, basically with this Killzone crossover, from my understanding, the way it worked is it cost like 1,900 and something credits to purchase. Now, you can farm credits in the game. You can purchase the credits. I think they're super credits or whatever. Um, you can purchase them with real world money. And obviously, that's kind of what they're trying to get you to do by making it so expensive. 1,900 credits. Uh, in in real world money, that's about $20. So the way it's been done up until this point with Helldivers 2 is if you want a like a new war bond, right? It costs well, I don't know exactly how many super credits it costs. I think it's 1,000 actually, which is that's like $10, right? But again, what a lot of players do is they farm these super credits by just playing the game. It takes a little bit of time, obviously, but you can farm them, save them up, and then you can use them to buy the war bonds, and you don't have to spend a dollar, right? You just have to give your time to grinding the game a little bit. So with this crossover, it became clear that Arrowhead's intent was to make money, hopefully pretty good money, right? By basically making it cost $20. And this was not a war bond. It was just like a content drop. It wasn't as robust as a war bond. And the community basically freaked out the community lost it and there was massive backlash. And so um, the very next day, Arrowhead responded and they said, actually, we're gonna make the second wave of content free. And they weren't originally gonna do that. So they're just saying we're gonna give it to you for free, and they're gonna, you know, work this out and figure out how they're gonna continue going forward. But it's worth noting that people were trying to place the blame on Sony, and Arrowhead actually responded and said it was us. We made the decision. Like, we're the ones making the decision with this type of stuff. We made the decision on the pricing. I understand why people would think it's Sony, but it's just interesting to kind of see how like people are very, very, very quick to always try to make Sony seem like the villain here. When in reality, I think what people forget is that video game studios are in the business of making money as well. They're in the business of making money because they need money to continue to sustain their studio and make more games beyond the game they just released. Now, I'm going to give my opinion on this. Um, Number one, I think it's great that there's going to be free content now that players get. Not going to ever complain about free content. That's awesome. And I think it's a good sign that the studio is taking in feedback and willing to, listen to players' frustrations and reverse course so quickly. This can be a great thing. However, on the other hand, I just kind of feel a little bit bad for the studio, man, because to me, what I'm seeing is like the big thing that I can't really walk away from with this conversation is the fact that they had a reason to make this decision. When they decided we're going to charge $20 for this content, that decision was made for one of two reasons. Number one, because they're greedy. Number two, because they actually determined that this is how much we're going to need to charge to make enough money to basically continue to justify pumping out as much potentially free content as we have been. It's a tough one because on one hand, the game does cost $40, so it's not like they're not getting money up front. But on the other hand, it is a live service game. And most of the content, if not all of it, like I said, can be obtained for free. You do not need to spend money to access any of the content. You just need to invest an appropriate amount of time into the game to be able to access it. I do think $20, it is a bit steep, right? But at the same time, when we look at the wider gaming industry, these types of microtransactions are not uncommon. In fact, unfortunately, I would say, I mean, it depends on how you view it. A lot of people see it as unfortunate. Um, this is kind of the norm. This is the expectation, especially for stuff featuring crossovers. The expectation is it's going to be expensive. It's not going to be dirt cheap. It's certainly not going to be free. And I feel like when I saw the reaction from a big chunk of the community, it just made me think, like, guys, is it really that serious? Like, is it really that bad to spend money to support the developers? I mean, I'm not trying to downplay $20, but it's like, if this is something that really speaks to you and you're really excited about and something that you really would love to have in the game, is throwing the dev $20 after all the free content that they've delivered really that bad? That's where I just kind of feel like if I had to guess, I don't think Arrowhead is doing it out of greed. Maybe I'm being naive here. Maybe I'm giving them more credit than I should, but I just feel like if they determine that we want to try to sell this for $20 because we're going to need that money, we have to make money on this. We're going to need that money to continue to fund the game. And players are happy with what they're getting. I just don't see the problem. I don't. It's not like they're asking for 40 or $50, which, I mean, yeah, that would be completely outrageous. That would be nonsensical. I'm not saying $20 isn't steep for a cosmetic or for this DLC. It is, but I just don't agree with the idea that it's like, basically, here's where I I think people were being a bit ridiculous. People were basically screeching at Arrowhead like, "We're quitting the game." Like, "We're quitting the game." And I'm like, "Are you serious?" Like, because the studio finally decided they want to try to make some money, you're going to quit this game. To me, that's just I think a bit over the top. I think it's one thing to express your frustration or your dismay with them choosing to charge this much money, but to basically to basically try to like boycott the entire game because of this, I just feel like it's I don't know, man. This is where I just kind of feel bad for the Arrowhead developers. They just seem to every decision they make, the community just loses their mind. And they're like put in this position where like, never mind, we're gonna do the opposite. And you could tell, like, Arrowhead's afraid of losing their players. And I get that they should be afraid. A developer should be afraid of losing their player base when you're trying to do a live service game. But I just have to like wonder at what point does it just kind of become like unreasonable where it's like I, I don't know. I mean, maybe the best option would have been like we're going to charge $10. I feel like people still would have freaked out, you know? Cypherpunk, you're saying, "Come on, we've shit on micros before. Can't ignore it just because it's a Sony supported game." Glazing on this one, MBG. No, look, Cypherpunk, I'm not trying to I hate that term. I despise that term, Cypherpunk. You know I despise that term. I'm not trying to glaze them for this or anything like that. I'm not saying we should happily throw $20 at them and say thank you, charge more next time. I'm not saying that. I'm just simply saying that if this is something that appeals to you and the developer's like, "Look, we want to charge $20 for it." Even I would be like, "Oh, okay, yeah, that's pretty pricey." But just given the circumstances, it's like this studio has not tried to bleed me dry. You know what I'm saying? Like at no point in time did they try to bleed me dry and hold me upside down and wring out all the money that I have in my pockets. They've done the opposite. And they've done a great job in, I would say, supporting the community, listening to the community, and especially with that like major update earlier in the year where like they nerfed everything to oblivion and the community was like, "This is terrible." And they were like, "You know what? Our bad. We're gonna turn this around." I guess I'm just saying, like, I feel like they deserve a little bit of a break. You know what I mean? Where it's like, you know what? They should be able to make some money. They should. And I guess my ultimate conclusion here is I'm most surprised at the fact that they're just like, we're just giving it for free. I think that is awesome. Now everybody's going to be happy. But it's just, I don't know, man. I genuinely wonder behind the scenes, like what their plan is going forward. Because again, I just try to remind people that there's a reason they're charging that money, like that price, because they've determined like, here's how much money we have to try to make to, either I would assume not just break even, but to be able to make some money and continue to run the studio smoothly, right? Um, and that's just they just axed that. They're like, never mind. So look, let's look at the other side of the coin. Is there a chance? Is there a chance that they were just like, we don't actually need this money. We just want to see how much money we can get? Yeah, that could be a reality. It seems unlikely for a studio like Arrowhead, with how transparent that development team has been. I wouldn't assume that's what they were doing. But it is a possibility. And maybe that is why they were able to just say, you know what, never mind. Maybe it was just simply a play for the bag. Not the necessary bag, just the bag because they want the bag. That's possible. But I just think that Arrowhead, here's another question, right? What does this mean for future crossovers? I want to highlight this for just a moment because I don't mean to be the person that's complaining about people complaining, but it just goes to show how whiny and just frankly unreasonable the gaming community can be sometimes. Basically, when they announced this, everybody, or at least a large group of people on the internet who care about Helldivers 2 complained aggressively. They complained aggressively and they really were being very hostile towards Arrowhead for this decision. And then Arrowhead reversed course and said, you know what, never mind. We're going to give the whole second portion out for free. After they announced that, I still saw people complaining by saying, like, everybody should be refunded. And on top of that, now they're worried. Now they're worried that because of this situation, Arrowhead's not going to do any more future collaborations. They're not going to do this anymore. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, this is where it becomes clear that at some point studios have to draw the line in the sand and just say no. Sorry, if you have to walk, then walk, but we're saying no. Because like the more you capitulate to a certain group, there I'm telling you, man, there are some people out there. In fact, there are a lot of, I would say a fair amount of people out there that if this studio were to go under tomorrow for whatever reason, they wouldn't care. They would definitely screech at the top of their lungs over a Killzone 2 collaboration that they probably didn't even care that much about in the first place. But the moment the studio goes under, they're like, oh, that sucks. Or there's layoffs. Oh, that how unfortunate. You know? And this is where I just think the fact that I still see people complaining even after they capitulate and say, you know what, never mind. We're backing off. And now people are worried that they're not going to do any more crossovers. Like, what? Like, you can't have it both ways. I think people also forget that when there's crossovers happening, the other party involved is also hoping to make some money. So it's like, what do you want? Like, do you want the crossovers? Do you not? Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't understand what people's expectations are becoming these days, where it's like, you just, I mean, look, if I were Arrowhead, I would, you know what I would do? I would try to work out a better price. Maybe that's the solution, right? Where it's like, maybe we should try to price this at $10 next time. Maybe that's the better way to go about it. Maybe that's like a happy medium, happy middle ground where you can still make some money, I would assume. But it's not going to be something like 15, 20, $25, right? It's going to be $10, more affordable. Maybe that's the solution. And if I were at Arrowhead, I would seriously look into that to see, is that viable? The thing is, it might not be viable. You know what I mean? Actually, Irfan, that's not true. Arrowhead did dispute that. Arrowhead said it was their decision with the pricing, not Sony's. I'm sure Sony, or Guerrilla Games in this case, was hoping to make some money too, of course. I'm sure that there was a certain split there. But Arrowhead was the one who decides how much they're going to charge. And they actually kind of stuck up for Sony in that way. And, you know, I just want to throw this out here too. It's not a matter of trying to glaze, right? It's just, I think the people specifically who are trying to use this as a way to tear down Sony need to realize, listen, guys, without Sony, this game wouldn't exist the way it does. It's just a fact. Sony gave this game double the amount of development time and asked if they wanted to double the budget because they believed in it. That's just the fact, man. And that's why I just feel like I understand the first instinct is to try to blame Sony because they're always, they're the corporate evil overlord. I get that. But I just think people are too quick to kind of, make it seem like it's just Sony that wants to make money here. Like, no, every party involved wants to make money. Wouldn't you? Cypherpunk, you're saying Arrowhead maybe should stop being weak and just keep the price. I mean, it's hard to say that only because it's like, again, I'm not going to complain. Hey, Arrowhead, you want to give it to me for free? Yeah, I'll take that. I'm not going to say no. You don't want my money? Okay, that's cool, man. That's cool. But it's just, for me, it's not even about like what's happening right now with kills. It's about what they're going to do next, you know? Like so were there other crossovers that you were planning on doing but now you're like scared shitless to do it cuz you're afraid your community is going to lose their mind? You know, that to me is what I feel is a little bit sad here where I don't know, man. I just I think Arrowhead they I mean, let's face it, this is their first time dealing with a very, very large player base. I can't blame them for not really being fully prepared and not really knowing what they should do at any given moment because I don't know that I would make the right choices either. If I had hundreds of thousands of players suddenly and I'm looking at the charts every day and I know that every little decision I make, this group of hundreds of thousands of players are going to react instantaneously, positively or negatively. It's high pressure. You know, it's you're at risk of just immediately making a wrong decision. And I mean, in this case, maybe they were just testing the waters. Maybe they didn't need to actually charge $20, but they just kind of wanted to see how are players going to respond to this. That's a possibility. But going from charging $20 to giving it away for free tells me that they're probably not going to do this again. Like that's my intuitive reaction to this. The fact that they were like, we want to make some money. Now we're actually willing to make no money. That tells me that this is just they view it as a mistake. They just want to get through it and they want to, move on from it and they'll never do a collaboration again. That's how I read it. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but excuse me. Cypherpunk, you're saying Call of Duty / Fortnite didn't get big being nice to players. And that's the unfortunate truth, Cypherpunk. I mean, I know it's not like a popular thing to do to just kind of like acknowledge the wider market and the reality of it. It's not a popular thing to do because, well, let's face it, for most people, uh, when we talk about the wider market, like we are talking about people who are probably not paying much attention to these types of conversations. Like they're not paying attention to the social media posts, or at the very least, they're definitely not reading the response. The responses and the replies to their social media posts. These are, yeah, I mean, we're talking about comparing casuals to hardcore players, and the reality of the situation is most of these companies, you mentioned Call of Duty, you mentioned Fortnite. It's not even so much that I mean, it's true that they didn't get where they are by being super nice to their hardcore players. It's just they start to realize that if we try to actively appeal more aggressively to the wider market, the more casual market, we'll probably make more money because they don't care. And nobody's going to make them care. And there's actually a similar situation occurring, and it has been for some time with Call of Duty, where Call of Duty has ridiculous skins now, nonsensical, and it's a military themed shooter. Like for example, in Black Ops 6, they just introduced a unicorn bundle or something where there's a literal unicorn companion that is in the lobbies, and you can use it to like the unicorn. There's an animation. I'm not even kidding. There's like an execution animation where this unicorn will fart on the enemy and kill the enemy. And, a lot of the more core or hardcore Call of Duty player base are just shaking their head, like looking at Activision and Microsoft to me like, what do you got? What is this? But what they don't realize is like, dude, that's going to be sold for like $30 or something, 20 or $30. There are going to be casual players who are not even remotely involved in any of these conversations that are going to laugh at that. They're probably well off financially, and they're just going to drop money on it. And Activision knows that. So, like, you have to kind of look at it as we could appeal to the more hardcore player base that is less willing to spend more money. Or we could just appeal to the more casual player base that is absolutely willing to spend money without even asking any questions. If you're a businessman or woman, and you're head of corporate, and you have to make these decisions. What decision seems to make more sense for your business? You see what I'm saying? It's unfortunate that it is this way. It doesn't always have. It's not always that bad. It's not as bad as I think some people make it sound. But I think that what Arrowhead tried to do here was try to make a play that a lot of other studios and a lot of other live service games have already made very successfully. And I think that there's like a certain player, like hardcore player base that's just like, I don't think so, not on our watch. And I know that that's like, is that a victory? Is it not a victory? Is it a victory for gamers? I mean, well, I'm not so sure because like it seems like yes on one hand because they're giving it out for free, but on the other hand, it's like, well, are they not going to do this anymore? Because I got to be honest, like if it was, look, we're either going to charge for this and we're going to make money off of it because we need to justify these collaborations and this content, or we're just not because we don't want to risk pissing people off. I honestly would have preferred like, no, you should charge, you should keep doing them and charge money. Like if people can't afford it, they can't afford it. But if it's like we either do it and charge or we don't do it at all, I'd rather them do it and charge because at least the option's there. At least there's something there where, maybe another thing too. I will say this, and this is an important thing for me to highlight, and this is the thing I'm not a fan of. Okay, if there's one thing I will actually be very hard on when it comes to microtransactions in 2024 in games is the FOMO factor. I cannot stand that. And it seems like maybe that is the critical mistake, potentially, that that is potentially the mistake that was made here, where I think they were putting it up there for 5 days. So you had 5 days to drop that $20. They extended it to 10 days. And that to me is something that is common practice now. That is how these things work. It's the FOMO. It's limited time. Content that we could easily make, if not permanent, at least like for months at a time. Limited time. It's psychological and it is manipulative, and that I don't like. But unfortunately, and again, this is just where we have to acknowledge the reality. Unfortunately, that's live service in 2024. It's just live service. Like any studio that wants to be successful in live service with microtransactions and make money. Guys, what is going on in my chat right now? Dude, I'm telling you, man, I'm getting to a point with my chat. Like I don't need, like I'm literally over here talking about Helldivers, and it seems like there is a war going on, with like a political war going on in my chat, and it's like, don't make me drop the hammer, man. I'm not. Look, I don't mind people wanting to have conversations, but for God's sake, why are you doing this to me, guys? Like, I'm literally over here being like, so about Arrowhead and Helldivers 2 and Killzone microtransactions. And I look at my chat and I'm seeing like Trump, Kamala Harris, Elon Musk. But anyway, at the end of the day, this is the way it went down. Arrowhead wanted to basically attempt to do what every big live service game does today, which is do a crossover at a premium price for a limited time. And the Helldivers 2 community seemingly was not having it. And so, again, it seems like this is where this might be the first and only collab we ever see because of this. Oh, nice. Miguel, you're saying $2,000 for an NVIDIA GPU. Yay. $20 for some content for a game you spend tens of hours of playing. Are you out of your goddamn mind? Simple. Just don't buy it. They're still licensing. They're still licensing the stuff. They probably have to pay for the licensing of another IP or share the revenue. Yeah, I mean, that's what I mean, dude, is like, I think a lot of times people maybe overlook the fact that they're like, the reason why some of this stuff is so ridiculously expensive is because yes, there's a licensing fee. They have to, the company that's licensing it obviously wants to make some money. The the product that's paying for the license also needs to worry about making a little bit of profit. So the money's being divvied up, a few different ways. So, but yeah, I just wanted to start the conversation by acknowledging that and talking about it. And, I understand the tough spot that Arrowhead is seemingly in, where if it was me, I don't know what I would do either. Like a part of me be like, man, I want to make money on this. I want to be able to do these collaborations successfully, but at the same time, seeing the type of backlash that they received, I can completely understand. We're like, you know what? It's not worth it. Let's just focus on keeping the player base happy. We don't have to do this stuff to be successful. And yeah, at the end of the day, no matter what, right? I can appreciate that too, Capono. They're very open, they're transparent, and they're willing to pivot on a dime for their community, which to be fair, like you can't say that about most devs these days, certainly for live service games. I just really wonder how it's going to work out for them in the long term. I guess the whole idea is as long as we have a strong player base, we'll be fine, right? As long as we can keep that player base strong, there will always be means to make money somehow, some way. And that's what they're going to focus on. At least that's my assumption. But we do want to move on to the next topic here. And yeah, so this stream may end up being a little bit shorter than normal because I did stream a lot later than normal. Um, but we're going to shift to this analyst saying that there's only room for one console next gen. So I'm going to go over this report with you guys. It says here, a new report by market research firm DFC Intelligence claims that PS6 and next gen Xbox will mightily struggle for a distant third place, as there's only room for two consoles in the next generation. Nintendo analysts say is in a strong position to remain number one. In its 2024 video game market report and forecast, DFC Intelligence claims that although the video game market is expected to grow and flourish beyond 2025, either Sony or Microsoft will fail to gain significant market share. The company stopped short of declaring a winner between the two, but did say that Sony has an advantage due to a loyal base and strong IP. Nintendo is expected to be the clear winner because of lack of competition as well as early availability of the Switch successor. As for what will determine whether the PS6 or the next-gen Xbox will win, DFC Intelligence says whichever console launches first will have a major advantage. Very interesting analysis there, although price and features will also play a significant role. DFC Intelligence also points out that Microsoft is now one of the biggest video game publishers and may choose to focus on software and distribution rather than hardware in the next gen, something that seemingly they've already begun to do. But I do want to say here that I'm pretty intrigued by the analysis that whoever goes first is apparently going to have a major advantage. Now, what makes that interesting is based off of what we know, Microsoft is going first, potentially by 2 years. Now, I don't think it's going to play out that way, and that may really catch Sony off guard, and I really wonder how Sony would respond to that. But reports have claimed that Microsoft is planning for a next-gen Xbox release by holiday of 2026. All reports we've heard about PlayStation 6 are claiming a 2028 release. So there could be a situation where Sony is maybe caught a little bit off guard here, but I don't know that that will make the biggest difference or as big of a difference as maybe this analyst is claiming. Jerome, you're saying, oh, Nintendo is number one now, huh? Well, that's what the article claims. I think what the analyst is basically saying here is that it seems like they're viewing the Switch 2 as a next gen competitor with the PlayStation 6 as well as the next Xbox. And that's interesting to me because, well, I mean, I think some people are not viewing it that way, but I think realistically speaking, we should view it that way because there are going to be people who are trying to decide, like, do I want a Switch or a PS6? Do I want a Switch or a PS5? I already have a PS5. Maybe I'll just get the Switch 2 and I won't worry about the PS6. What about the Xbox? Do you want an Xbox and a Switch 2? How many third-party games is the Switch 2 going to get? Can I play Call of Duty on the Switch 2? If I can play Call of Duty on the Switch 2 and I can hook it up to my, dock, do I really need a PS6, right? I think that these are real things that are going to occur, but I do think it's wise to kind of just hone in on one premium home console because the biggest advantage that the PS6 will have is it will be a premium home console and it does have an established player base that has a large library on PS5, going back to PS4. I think that the Switch 2, while it will have very strong third-party support, stronger than we've seen, I don't think the majority of people are going to view the Switch 2 as their one-stop shop, so to speak, for all of their games. New rumor, Jez is newly suggesting that Microsoft will allow third parties to utilize Xbox OS to build different models on the Xbox. This is to combat Steam OS. This is the future. You're saying this article is junk. I don't think it's junk. I think the analyst is, I'll be honest with you, man. I wouldn't say the article itself is junk as much as the analyst, I think, is just kind of, it's like, my job is to analyze. And it's like, I think you're kind of pointing out the obvious here. Like, I do think I think there's going to be a very clear winner when it comes to the home console battle for the next generation. But I don't think that's going to stop kind of what you're speaking to here, okay, that the future is beyond console. It just is. Sony didn't make it that way. Even Microsoft didn't make it that way. It's just, you're right. Like, I mean, look at what Sony's doing with the I forget what it's called, but having kind of like the PlayStation dashboard or OS or PlayStation OS integration to a small extent or a certain extent with their games on Steam. Like, this is something that, yeah, is going to continue. Sony's aware of that. Microsoft is obviously aware of that. But when it comes to analyzing hardware, I mean, I think it's going to be pretty clear cut next generation, to be honest. I think what we're going to be seeing is the Switch 2, by the time the next generation Xbox comes out, would have been out for about a year. And I think it's going to get off to a very, very hot start. And there's no chance that Xbox is going to touch it. I do think if Xbox launches way early, because that's the question I want to ask you guys. And that to me is the big part here that I'm kind of hung up on, because I feel like I'm not exactly sure. This analyst claims that whoever launches first is going to have a major advantage. Like, if Microsoft launches first, they're going to have an advantage. If Sony launches first, they're going to have an advantage. If the rumors we've heard are true and Microsoft is planning on next gen to be 2026 for them, and Sony ends up being 2 years late in 2028, do you like, how much of a difference do you think that makes for Xbox? Or do you think it's too late? Do you think it won't matter? Do you think by that point in time, when Xbox launches their next gen console, Sony, it's literally like all Sony's going to have is the PS5 Pro and the PS5. No word of a PS6 yet, right? It's too early for them. Will it matter? Will that actually help the next gen Xbox if by that point in time, so many games that are Xbox published are launching on PS5 and PS5 Pro? Will it matter? Because I'll be honest with you, my gut tells me I don't think it's gonna matter that much. I think it will help the next gen Xbox. I think it will give it a little boost. The fact that there will be no PlayStation 6 around it, I think will give it a bit of a boost. But I think like once the PS6 comes around, it's just like, okay, well, our time in the sun is up. Jerome, you're saying if the Switch comes out and it's in first place and the next Xbox comes out in 2026, but is a premium console, what if that, I think you would say, what if that puts Sony in third place? Ooh, I don't know, man. I don't, I guess it would depend on how quickly the PS6 can catch the next gen Xbox. If the next gen Xbox has a 2-year, head start, how far does it go? How quickly can the PS6 catch that? Very interesting. And PlayStation Pete coming in with a $100 super chat, bro. PlayStation Pete dropping $100, and he says, "Merry Christmas MBG, here is your gift. I bought Turok 1, 2, and 3. Due to PS4 error, can you please have Mrs. MBG yell out, Merry Christmas, PlayStation Pete. Love you guys. PlayStation Pete asking for a Mrs. MBG shout out. I'll see if I can make that happen in just a moment, PlayStation Pete. Thank you so much for that, dude. That's very kind of you. Very unexpected. I really appreciate you showing that type of support. And thank you for the Christmas gift, man. Thank you so much for that, PlayStation Pete. You're saying you got Turok 1, 2, and 3. I was talking about Turok recently on the channel, and the last time I remember playing it was on the N64, and I think it was like Turok like Rage Wars or something like that. But I am feeling the new game that they showed. I know some people are disappointed that they're going third person, but I do think it looks good, man. I do think it looks good. So let me see if I can get Mrs. MBG to do a shout out to wish you a Merry Christmas, PlayStation Pete. Hold on. It's the least I could do for $100 super chat. All right. She'll give you your Merry Christmas, PlayStation Pete. Here you go.
Merry Christmas, PlayStation Pete.
I hope that came through okay. I tried to turn the mic. So, PlayStation Pete, once again, thank you so much for that, man. Very kind of you. Really appreciate that type of generosity. And, I didn't say it in the beginning of the stream, but you guys know it's that type of support that allows me to be able to continue to do these streams, make the videos, have these conversations in depth. And I very much appreciate it. So, thank you so much, man. Turok on N64 was sick. It was, dude. It was fun. I remember playing with my cousin. We would be playing split screen co op, trying to fight each other. I just want to say really quick too, Jerome, with your last super chat. I look, man. I think even if Xbox comes out 2 years ahead of the PlayStation 6 with their next gen console, I don't think it's gonna, like, let me put it to you this way. If Xbox gets to like 15 million consoles, right, by 2028, which I think is a bit high. I'll be honest, I think that's very high. If they get like to 12 to 15 million consoles by 2028, I think Sony's going to do that in like 8 to 9 months or to a year. Depending. I mean, it depends on the price. There's so many factors we don't yet know. I did want to go back to something OK said here. He said, that's way off base. Next gen will have many different consoles and handhelds. More than any other generation. Choice will be the name of the game and will put pressure on PlayStation. Well, here's my question to that, right? Because I think that's an interesting analysis as well, and maybe something that is true. My question is the idea of pressure being applied, right? The idea of pressure being applied to PlayStation because you got Steam out here already offering a bunch of options. Then you have Microsoft basically diving in headfirst saying, hey, we're doing that too. Even though we started as a console and we started as a closed ecosystem, we're opening everything. We're going to give you the most amount of options. That does put Sony in a position where it's like, yeah, you might have to start doing that too. Maybe not to the full extent as the competitors are, but you're going to have to start doing it. My question is, like, will PlayStation view this as a bad thing? Will PlayStation view it as a bad thing? Will they view it as something potentially detrimental? Because I feel like mostly they won't. I think like certain aspects where it's like, and I guess it depends on how great the pressure really is, right? You know what I think would You know what I think would do it for Sony? And I think this is something we may end up seeing. I think Microsoft's going to reach a point where they're making so much money on their games that it makes Sony go, can, can we do that? How do we do that? How are they making like they're making that much money on their games? Shit. And ironically enough, Sony will be making some money as well. But once they see like the total amount of money they're making from their games, I think that that's going to be something that Sony is forced to pay attention to. And Planet Schlorpian comes in and re-ups his membership. Coming back to greatness awaits. Planet Schlorpian, thank you so much for that, man. You know I appreciate it. Appreciate all my members. Means a lot. Yeah, listen, we get a lot of membership gifts here, and a lot of people who get temporary memberships through those gifts. I feel like I don't shout out my actual members, like paying members enough. So I want to make sure to do that right now. Big shout out to anybody who's, re-upping their membership on a monthly basis. It actually does help out way more than you know. I obviously very much appreciate the membership gifts, but to those of you who are choosing to remain a member, that helps way more than you know. So thank you for that, Planet Schlorpian. We have Starscream 3117. He says PlayStation has too much market share. Next gen Xbox could release 2 years early, but no devs will support it or care until PlayStation releases the same tech years later. Well, see, that's what I think makes what Mark Cerny was just talking about so interesting, because we see how like Sony is entering this pretty big partnership with AMD where like Mark Cerny's like, listen, bro, we're on the cutting edge. Like we are going to be aggressively R&Ding new technology that will probably, make it to market 4 years from now. If the next gen Xbox is coming out 2 years ahead of it, what kind of tech can we expect? What will that next gen leap look like? We do know that Microsoft said it's going to be their most technically advanced console ever. What does that look like? How does that stack up against the PS5 Pro, right? How will it stack up to the PS6? So the next generation Xbox, I mean, I feel like you're right to a degree where a lot of devs probably will be like, "Hey, that's great." And we'll put games on it, but like we're really just kind of waiting for the real next gen leap. But I don't know, man. Like a lot of people feel like, see, this is where I think where the pressure is. I think the pressure's on Mark Cerny right now, dude. I got to be honest. I think right now there's like the most amount of pressure on Mark Cerny's shoulders and his R&D team over there, his engineering team at PlayStation and AMD for that matter. And I think this is why they partnered. The reason why I say I think the most amount of pressure is on them is because, yeah, it's exactly that, Capono. You're saying define next gen. Define next gen. Yeah, dude, the big leaps. I think Microsoft is going to be approaching their next generation Xbox embracing that fact that like we're not trying to like blow you away because we can't. We'll blow you away with the amount of games we show, hopefully, and you like the way those games look. But in terms of like I don't think Microsoft's going to try to sell people on next gen. I don't. I think they're just going to be like, here's our new console. It's better than the last one. Here's what it can do that the last one can't. We hope you buy it. I don't think they're going to like make it obvious like we don't care if you don't, but it's just I think they're well aware that they I think Microsoft understands that at this point in time pretty much everybody's aware that they do not care if you buy their console, you know? So I think there's a ton of pressure on Mark Cerny where Mark Cerny has to produce a next generation PlayStation 6 knowing that Sony still does care about this. Sony has every intention of still selling a lot of consoles. And if Sony had it their way, the PS6 would be the fastest, best-selling PlayStation of all time, and prove that, hey, this is still the best way to make money right now, right? This is still the most viable way. And the only way that's going to happen, I mean, there's no denying that the biggest part is going to be Mark Cerny coming out and saying, here's the PlayStation 6. Here's what it offers. Here's what it does. Here's what differentiates it from the PS5 Pro and the PS5. And I feel like that's going to be a difficult task. I do feel like this could be a difficult task. And maybe that is exactly why Sony's not in a rush. Maybe that's why they're like, yeah, we'll wait till 2028. We'll wait because we feel like we're going to need that much time. Jerome, you're saying, yeah, that's fair. Long as we know Switch will be number one. I mean, dude, the Switch 2 looks like it's going to clean up. I feel like everything, like the stars are aligned for Nintendo, where the way it seems to have been for Nintendo for a while, or at least throughout their history, is like they do well and then they kind of mess up a little bit and then they do well again and then maybe they mess up again and they just kind of have this back and forth. I feel like the stars are aligned where like the Switch did incredible for them, is still doing incredible, and the Switch 2 shows every sign. As long as they don't do just something truly brain dead, the Switch 2 shows every sign of doing even better or just as well. You know, just back to back massive console success, generational success, from gen to gen. And I mean, we're apparently the Nintendo Switch 2 reveal is happening in January now. And that's really interesting to me because I feel like we're all kind of we're all waiting on Nintendo. You know, it's like, all right, Nintendo, what can we really expect with the Switch 2? I think we all have high expectations. Like we're expecting good things, but like what's your lineup going to look like for exclusives? What's the third party support going to look like? What's the pricing going to be? These are all things that are 110% going to impact Sony's decision making for next gen. Absolutely. Not just with the PS6, but with their handheld as well. And maybe Microsoft too. So that'll be interesting to see. Waylid, you're saying, remember this, next gen Valve is going to be the competition that PlayStation needs. I think they are cooking a console. Yeah, we had a whole stream dedicated to talking about that. And a lot of people took umbrage with a statement I made when we talked about that, where I to be fair, I didn't really clarify. So I kind of understand why some people were taking umbrage with it. I said like PlayStation's bigger than Steam. You know, they're bigger than Valve. What I was really referring to is revenue wise, like in terms of just like the scope of like what their ambition is and how much like the type of revenue they're trying to drive. Sony is bigger, quite substantially, but that is also because they're a publicly traded company. You know, that is the greatest advantage. Like the fact that Valve is smaller because they choose to be. That's the important thing. Like I think people were taking it as like me trying to shit on Steam or Valve, and I was not. And this is where I get frustrated, where people want to, they hear what I have to say and they always think it's always in bad faith, and it's not. I think Steam and Valve's greatest advantage is that they are not a publicly traded company, that they can willingly stay smaller, and in doing that, they can make decisions that these bigger companies who are beholden to these shareholders and have all this pressure to find the next big thing, and don't get left behind. That is what makes Valve so dangerous, and that like we can do this in exactly the way we want, and it doesn't have to be driven by any kind of outside pressure, and we can just really do things in a way that resonates on a deeper level with maybe the gaming community, because it's and because we're not worried about getting left behind. We're not worried about anything. We're just worried about doing our own thing. And it would be so interesting to imagine a PlayStation operating in that way, because I do think that if PlayStation was not a publicly traded company under Sony, underneath a major Japanese conglomerate, and they were like an independent, they wouldn't be as nearly as big as they are. But I think that would actually, in some ways, a lot of PlayStation fans would actually like that. So when I say that PlayStation is bigger than Steam or Valve, I just mean that in the holistic business sense of like PlayStation is they're going for the bigger play here, just like Microsoft is as well. When I talk about the competition between Sony and Microsoft, they're both going for the big win, like the big win, right? Um, the beauty of Steam and Valve is they want to make money, but they've just realized like we don't have to play these games. You know what I mean? Like we don't have to be part of the rat race, so to speak. And if they are making a Steam console, I am so interested in seeing that because well, one of two things is going to happen. If there is a Steam console that does come out and it's a real console, right? Like it's like this thing actually is going to compete with the PS6 and the next gen Xbox and maybe even Switch too. If this is what happens, then one of two things is going to happen. It's going to be just like the Steam Deck, where the Steam Deck, this is where I think people, hardcore gamers who care about Steam and Valve, they sometimes I think they talk about the Steam Deck like it's some colossal success, and the reality is it's a modest success. It's selling pretty well comparatively, like relatively speaking, but it's not like you know it's not like it's selling like tens of millions of units. It's selling millions of units. That was the last update I believe that we got from Valve. So again, it's not doing bad. It is doing well, considering who it's trying to appeal to, and what it's offering. It's doing something that again any company that's like, should we make something to compete with the Steam Deck? You have to question like why didn't they already? Why is the Steam Deck the first one? Well, because again, that's the beauty of Steam and Valve is that like, yeah, we don't need to sell shareholders on this, man. We don't need to sell 10 million units or 20 or 30 or 40 million. We can just sell what we sell. If it fails, it fails and we'll move on. But if it finds us a small but loyal audience, then that's a success to us. And that's the thing. The Steam Deck is a success for them. But that's where I'm trying to say, like, the difference in what Sony and Microsoft are trying to pursue versus the difference in Valve is Valve can be laid back and be like, we don't really care if the masses want this or not. We just want to find like a niche audience that will support it, and hopefully we can make good money. That's the goal. Sony and Microsoft are like, yeah, we need to get everybody. We need tens of millions, hundreds of millions. This is our ambition. And that inherently just changes the approach. So when I talk about the idea of a Steam console or like a proper Steam console from Valve that's competing in some way, shape, or form with the PlayStation and the Xbox, one of two things, like I said, is going to happen. It's either just going to basically be another Steam Deck situation where it does find a small but very loyal, enthusiastic audience, and it carves out a very small place for itself where people love it. There's a lot of passionate fans behind it, but it's not finding like the mass commercial success where it's selling, 40, 50, 60, 70 million consoles. Either that or it's going to take the entire console market by storm, and it does blow up, and it does actually, holy shit, they found some kind of success somehow that nobody could have predicted. Even Valve couldn't have predicted, because it was the right time. They offered the right package, so on and so forth. I think that's much less likely, but the thing is, if that were to, even if they were to find moderate success, where it's like, oh shit, a Steam console came out and it actually sold more than 10 million units, Sony's going to pay attention to that. I'm not saying Sony will feel threatened by that, but they're going to pay attention. Like, oh, hold on, what's going on over here? How many units did they sell? Because those are potential customers that they maybe took away from PlayStation. And so it will force Sony to look at what Steam's doing, what Valve's doing, and considering Valve, again, they don't have that pressure to constantly grow in the same way. it could create a very interesting scenario. But I went on and on about that, but it's just it's an interesting scenario to kind of run through. Kyle Say Stuff, you're saying I think Mark did the best, but AAA is way too expensive. I think you're saying Mark Cerny did his best, but AAA is way too expensive and too long to develop. We might not even see true PS5 potential till very late this generation. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to disagree with what you're saying, Kyle Say Stuff, because it's like we are seeing the problems with the AAA market these days. And, PlayStation is at the center of this. I think this is where, again, when I talk about Mark Cerny having this immense pressure on his shoulders, this is part of it, where he not only has to develop this console with the hardware side in mind and just, we got to make it powerful and make it feel like it's going to be next gen, and we got to be very conscientious about the price point as well. He also has to keep the developers in mind. He has to keep in mind that these developers are making bigger and bigger AAA games. They're taking longer and longer to develop. That's why when we talk about the road to PS5, when Mark Cerny first revealed that, or revealed the PS5 and talked about it in depth, that's one of the main things in fact, I think that's what he started off talking about, is how quickly can a developer make a triangle, time to triangle, I think is what he called it. And how the PS5 is like less than 1 month. So the quickest it's ever been for any PlayStation console. You could tell that there was a real emphasis on we need to we need to make it so these developers can make games more efficiently and quicker. And I imagine that that has probably ramped up even more so now going into the PlayStation 6, knowing that games are getting even bigger. Like, it hasn't slowed down. So, yeah, I mean, it seems to me like the PlayStation 6 is going to be Mark Cerny's last go, his last time developing a PlayStation console. At least that's kind of what he made it seem like. And I think that's a fair assumption. He might retire after that. Or maybe the PS6 Pro, I guess. I'm assuming that'll be a thing one day. And so, I have to imagine he's probably viewing this as like, you know what? This is where I really gotta leave my mark. Because nobody knows what's gonna happen after the PlayStation 6, dude. And he might really feel like, you know what, I gotta do something to like I think Mark Cerny already left his mark on the industry, obviously. I don't think he has anything to prove. I just think it's more of like he seems like the type of person where if he's gonna go out, he wants to go out with a bang. Yeah, like the last hurrah. And I just don't think he wants to leave on a sour note. And the reality is the PS6 has, oh yeah, his mark, no pun intended. The PS6 is at risk of being underwhelming. I know there are PlayStation fans that don't want to hear that, but that's not Sony's fault. That's not Mark Cerny's fault. That's just the reality of diminishing returns. It's at risk of being too underwhelming. And so there's a lot of effort that has to go into not bullshit either. People are going to see through the bullshit. People don't want to be bullshitted. They want it to be real. They want it to be genuine. And obviously the people who are like Mark Cerny and the developers, they want it to be real and genuine too. So there's a lot of pressure to make sure you got to nail this one. You got to execute perfectly, flawlessly. You got to thread that needle. And I think because there's so much pressure, it's making me that much more interested in the next generation. I know it's like, well, we still got 4 years left of PS5, a lot of time, absolutely, not in any rush. But the more I think about it, the more it becomes clear that, yeah, there's going to be a lot of pressure on this, dude. Makes me very interested. Jerome Montgomery, thank you for the super chats, buddy. You're saying, I see a lot of people go on for console to PC next gen and only have a PC and a Switch 2. Will I stream the Switch 2 launch event? LOL, you have to. I would like to. I'm just a little bit nervous. because like I said in my other stream, um, based off of my understanding, my limited understanding of how Nintendo handles YouTube stuff, apparently they're like kind of notorious for uh copyright striking or like not letting YouTubers like have any of their like use any of their footage or whatever. Again, I don't know how true this is. Maybe it's changed. I haven't looked into it too deeply. But I would imagine if I were to stream the event, the launch event or the reveal event, I should say, of the Switch 2, I would be fine and I wouldn't have to worry about getting a copyright strike from Nintendo. But then again, I've never streamed a Nintendo event before. Do other people stream Nintendo events? Could somebody let me know? Is this a thing? Like, do you know of any other YouTuber that actually does stream Nintendo events? Tidy's just saying yes. Do they ever have any problems? Or does it seem like they ever have any problems? Because I would like to stream it. Yeah. It's a big moment. And I'm very interested in it. I am. I kind of like let the Switch pass me by. Tons do. My kids watch them now and then. Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm gonna watch it and I'm gonna stream it. Yeah. As long yeah, if you guys are saying other people do and they're fine, I'll definitely stream it. I think it'll be fun. I mean, look, I can't guarantee what my reactions will be like. I mean, people might be freaking out about stuff they're seeing and I'm just like, cool, I guess. You know, like I'm that out of the loop with Nintendo, but I'm fascinated. You know, I'm very fascinated. I think it'll be interesting for me to go in as a former Nintendo fan who was a fan growing up. You know, N64, GameCube, pretty much dipped out after that. After the Game Boy Advance SP. Planet Scorpion, you're saying, oh no, your super chat's next. Yeah, I'm sorry if I'm a little bit behind on the super chats. I apologize. But yeah, that would be cool to stream that. Planet Scorpion, you're saying here with the super chat, Microsoft admits how much they dropped the ball in their documentary series Power On. They aren't just the next Sega, they're the next Atari. Yeesh. I actually didn't watch that, believe it or not. I meant to get around to watching it, and I never did. But I mean, yeah, if you're Microsoft, dude, again, I always bring this up. It's hard not to because it's just so fascinating to me to think what the ambition was. But Microsoft at the beginning of at the beginning of the Xbox One generation, when they were building up to their launch, they really believed like we can go on to sell 200 million consoles. And I thought that was so cool because it's like, wow, man, they really believe in this market. Like they really believe they can grow this market. And oh, how wrong they were. But it's so interesting to think that like if they did like I almost like try to imagine like what if the Xbox One didn't screw up? What if last generation both the Xbox One and the PS4 were like going toe to toe? How different would the console gaming landscape look right now? Would it just simply be less PS4 players and it would be more evenly distributed? Or is it possible that Sony and Microsoft in tandem could have actually grown the market? You know, it's interesting to think. But yeah, it's unfortunate that you know, seemingly Microsoft as a direct console competitor, because like I said, Sony and Microsoft will continue to compete no matter what. They will continue to compete, but in terms of like, you know, them aggressively competing in the console space and the hardware space to grow the hardware market. I mean, look, I will say this, there is still a spark, not all hope is lost. It seems like Sony and Microsoft are going to take the competition mobile, right? Like it seems like the competition may be in the handheld space and that opens up many different possibilities. Jerome with more super chats here. Thank you for that, buddy. You're saying if I can get Sony games on the Steam console, that's a win-win. I think the Steam console is ARM at people's like like a powerful unit with a console like experience with the ease of use, plus they will have Sony games. I mean, see, that's like the big question, right? That's the big, I would say that's the elephant in the room. We did hear supposedly that this console is apparently real. Like this is something Steam or Valve is working on. I don't know. I'm telling you, man, I think Sony would remove their games from Steam. Well, I don't know. I think Sony would be watching it like a hawk. I think Sony would not announce they're removing their games from Steam until they see how this thing is received. So like if this hypothetical Steam console exists, I think Sony won't say a word. They'll just let it launch, and if it's very clear that this thing is going to be extremely niche and it's not going to find like it's not a threat to Sony at all. You know, it sells, like 3-4 million units. And I think Sony's just like, oh, okay. Yeah, we're just going to keep putting our games on Steam. And I think for people who are interested in that experience, like you're saying here, that'll be a benefit to them. But as long as it's not a real threat to Sony, they won't remove their games. But if this thing catches fire and it's like, holy shit, they're moving millions of units very quickly, I think Sony would immediately take their games off, dude. Like immediately. I think it'd be like, yep, no, we're not even risking it. I think they would get so much backlash for that. But then again, I don't think Sony was expecting this. I don't think Sony expected Valve to make a console. But then again, we don't know what Sony's long-term plans are. So maybe it's a non-factor for them. Yeah, that's the thing. Okay, I agree with that. It would be a like I think Sony would really prefer not to have to do that. I think if it came down to it, they would, but you'd have to ask yourself like how well would this console have to do for Sony to genuinely feel like that's a threat? You know? Man, how crazy would that be though? Could you like it's just crazy to think you would get a Steam console like a year or two from now that's as powerful as the next gen console, offers Steam games. You play Helldivers too. Meanwhile, you buy an Xbox, you still can't. You don't not only do you not get Steam games, you're not getting any PlayStation games either. I mean, it's kind of crazy. And okay with the super chat says it's the accumulation of options rather than PlayStation console that poses a threat. If Microsoft allows third parties to make Xbox a 50 to make Xbox a 5090 console, Steam OS, many handhelds. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting to think that what Sony has to deal with is something that they I don't want to say are unfamiliar with because this generation they've been more open to experimenting and trying to like I know a lot of people still feel like Sony's really stingy and not they're not doing it as well as some other companies are, but there's no denying that if you look at the way Sony has approached things from the PS1 through 4 generation, and then you compare that to the PS5 generation, I think it is very obvious that Sony's been doing a lot more this gen. Like in just the past couple years, they've done things that, again, people I think would have never really expected them to do. And I think it does kind of give us that broader answer of like, so will Sony do this stuff if they feel like they have to? And I think the answer is absolutely yes, they will. And when we say like, what's this stuff? It's kind of like what you're talking about here. Maybe just kind of accepting that, okay, we don't want to do anything to compromise, like to actively compromise our console sales. We don't want to do anything that communicates to a gamer like you don't need a PlayStation. But that's where Sony's in this kind of awkward position where it's like, but that's kind of what we have to do. So this is why when you see Sony's strategy, it's like, why isn't Sony going day and date? Because it's like they don't They are afraid that if they do that, they are sending a message you don't need a PlayStation console. But they're just they're trying to let it happen naturally, I think is what I'm trying to say. They're trying to let things settle in naturally, and they have to be like, I would say they have to be 2 steps ahead and 2 steps behind, not 4 steps ahead. You get like, does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense. But basically what I'm trying to say is like, if you look at Microsoft and you look at all the changes Microsoft is rapidly making, they're like, Microsoft is trying to be 4 steps ahead. They're like, we're just going to embrace the future now. And that's why you're kind of seeing this weird push and pull when it comes to reactions from people. And the more, you know, as time goes on, people are becoming more and more, they're easing into it, you know, where it's like, oh yeah, you know what? I guess it's fine. Microsoft is 4 steps ahead because they're just like, you know what? We're done with caring about hardware. We're done trying to win the console war. I don't even think they care about winning the subscription war at this point. I think all Microsoft actually cares about is like, can we just make the most games and make the most money on those games and just be everywhere? That is the end game. That is the end goal. And that is what I would consider being 4 steps ahead. But there is sacrifice required to get there, right? And that's where when you look at Sony, they're like, damn, let's not forget what Jim Ryan said. I mean, I know he's not the CEO anymore, but believe me, he was just the messenger. This is Sony's wider plan. He's like, yeah, it's amazing to be able to sell tens of millions of units of our games to tens of millions of people, but I would love it to be hundreds of millions. That was from former PlayStation CEO Jim Ryan. Again, him just being the messenger of like, that's Sony's ultimate grand plan here. It's just the way it is. But it's like, Sony's not going to say, so fuck it, let's just do it now. Because if they do, there's a real chance your console sales might tank. If they don't tank, there's gonna be a noticeable, concerning dip that you're gonna have to speak to your shareholders about. You also don't know if it will work the way you think. For example, everybody's under the impression, or at least a lot of people are under the impression, and if I haven't read your super chat yet, just please hang tight. I promise I'm going to read it. I just want to make sure I get my thoughts out. Most people are under the impression that if Sony were to release, let's just say, Ghost of Yotei, right? The next Ghost game, day and date on PC, they are under the impression that, oh my God, dude, you are going to get millions more sales. Millions. Like if you could sell 3 million units or 4 million units on day one on the PS5, if you drop it on Steam as well, you're gonna see 6 to 7 million, 8 million potentially. We don't know that. Like, look, I think the answer is obvious. Will they sell more units? Yes. The question though is, but how many more? Are we talking 1 million more at launch? Are we talking multiple millions? Are we talking less than a million? These are the questions that Sony is going to eventually get the answers to. They're just not going to happen overnight. I will say, like, you look at something like Helldivers 2, it sold better on PC than it did console, but can you really compare Helldivers 2 to, say, Ghost of Yotei? I don't think you can. So it's like, if you were to release something like Ghost of Yotei day one on Steam as well as PlayStation, because of how many units Helldivers 2 sold on Steam launching day and date, just to find that, oh, we only saw like 1.5 million sales boost. Now we're worried about how many potential console sales we just lost. Because here's the reality that Sony is facing. This is just the truth. The only reason Sony probably hasn't done this already is fear of online backlash from the fan base. That's the truth, dude. I'm telling you, Hiroki Totoki just went on record, and I didn't report on this, but I'll bring it up now. Hiroki Totoki just answered uh, an investor question where he was asked about PC and whether or not Sony sees it as a competition or a threat. And he straight up, I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but he straight up said, "We do not see PC as a threat or competition." Like basically, like he's just saying, like, no, we just don't. Like we're totally cool and chill with PC. I'm telling you, that reveals it right there. The only reason Sony hasn't done this already is because they are afraid of the incredible backlash they will get. And I don't know how they're going to do it. I'll be real with you guys. I don't like if I was Sony, I wouldn't know how to do it. The first thing I would think in my mind is, you know, what if we were to try to drop Death Stranding 2 day one on PC? PS5 console exclusive day one on PC. The first thing I would think is, dude, people are going to lose their minds. You're going to have the PlayStation fanboys losing it, and you're going to have the PlayStation haters losing it, and it's going to be a nightmare. But it's like, well, then when do we do it? How do we do it? I think we're getting there. Again, Spider-Man 2, 15 months. Oh, yeah, 2 to 3 years. Actually, let's make it 15 months. How long until it's 9 months? How long until it's 6 months? Boiling the frog, right? I don't know if that's the best analogy to use, but just shorten the gap. Yeah, that's what I mean. And again, I'm saying this because like the biggest reason PlayStation, I think certain PlayStation fans they'll say the biggest reason you can't. That's true. Okay. By the way, I think what you're pointing out is true. I think you're talking about Fire Sprites Until Dawn 2. I think job listings already confirmed that's going to be day and date. That's super fast. See, I feel like it might be looking at, like, we might be looking directly at it. Like, it says it in a job listing that this game we're making is going to be day one on PC as well. I'm pretty sure, unless I'm misremembering. All right, let me read these super chats. I'm sorry to keep you guys waiting. Kyle Say Stuff, you're saying the whole Asia market is massive. Gamers in China and Japan mostly play on the go, hence mobile. Nintendo Switch is a huge success. Nintendo Switch 2 will continue the trend, also because they still have true permanent exclusives. I'm starting to think that, Nintendo having permanent exclusives, I mean, look, man, I think they're just going to be the truly unique kind of outlier in the gaming market. And I think Nintendo is just in that position where they can do that. I think they can do that. I think that, I mean, I know it's maybe a little bit ridiculous to try to think of this right now because we're still waiting on we're still waiting on the Switch 2 reveal, but I just kind of wonder to myself, like, what's beyond the Switch 2? What happens if the day comes, could be 15 years from now, right? But what happens when they have another hardware failure? If not failure, something that really just drops, right? What does Nintendo do? Do they just power through? Maybe. That's what they did with the Wii U. So maybe Nintendo is in this very unique position that only they can be in, where it's like we will just commit to the hardware to the end. I mean, let's ask ourselves this question for a moment. The Wii U was like the biggest failure ever. The Wii U was it was just an utter flop. I mean, there were conversations when the Wii U was around of people thinking like, dude, they might go third party. That's how bad it was. What if the Switch was not the success it was? I'm not saying like what if it failed, but what if it struggled? It didn't do, like it was pretty clear like this thing's going to struggle to hit 40 or 50 million units. Would Nintendo's strategy be the same? I feel like that's an interesting hypothetical to try to answer because I feel like it might be. I feel like the answer is like yes, their strategy might be that like might have been the same, and we'll just keep doing it until it works again. Maybe not though. Maybe it would have changed dramatically. So I just think Nintendo, as long as the Switch is successful, the Switch One's a massive success. The Switch Two is going to be a massive success. See, and Wabu dude, I'm so sorry, man. Wabu dude, just wait one more moment. I want to just answer what Jerome said here because it has to do with Nintendo. He says Nintendo IP are too strong. LOL. I mean, the Wii U basically proved that even even Nintendo's IP isn't enough to move consoles. If the console is deemed that much of a either failure due to just lack of features or innovation or just confusion. And that to me is the most important thing that should haunt Nintendo. And it should haunt them in the sense of like you should never forget that because it doesn't, your IP is probably the most valuable out here. It is. But it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to succeed with your own hardware. You know what I mean? It's just so the Wii U is such a fascinating case study because I think it revealed the truth. It revealed the truth of like if Nintendo's IP was as strong as I think we all believe it is, it should have carried the Wii U. Not to 100 million, but it should have carried it to like 40, 50 million. And it didn't. You thinking it's just an anomaly? I mean, it could be. Yeah, at the end of the day, it could just be a weird anomaly where it's like, holy shit, that's like a very unique set of circumstances that only happened in that one moment and it never happens again. It's possible. Yeah. Wabu dude, you're saying what features or innovations do you think the PS6 needs to include to truly differentiate itself from both the other next gen consoles and the PS5? It's a great question. Well, I feel like one of the things that Sony is going to focus on is PSSR, but I don't know that that's going to be able to do as much of the heavy lifting as we think. I think it will be vital, to like flex that feature. I think that you'll have a lot of the basic stuff, just like way more power, much stronger CPU, like a true next gen CPU. And maybe, I don't know, maybe that could do more lifting than I think, but all right. Here's what I really think it's going to come down to, Jerome. Here's what I think it's going to come down to. I think Sony is going to have to answer one very important question, and they're going to have to answer it clearly and concisely. There can be no stuttering. There can be no hesitation. It has to be locked and loaded. And as soon as you ask that question, you're blasted with the double-barreled shotgun of here's your answer, boy. You know? And that question is, so are you doing exclusive games or not? And if they cannot concisely answer that question, I do believe all the other features that we can think of, I think they will help. They will help and they will matter. But I'm telling you, I just do not think with the PlayStation 6, Sony will be able to pull another everything's cross-gen. And if they do, because here's the thing, when I talk about them answering it concisely and just pulling the trigger, The answer might be no, we're not. And I think depending on the answer there, right? Whether or not, like, if they're like, yes, we are doing exclusives. If you want these games, you buy a PlayStation 6. If they can't say that, then what they are saying is you don't need a PlayStation 6 to play these games. And what I firmly believe, and I'm only saying this now in the year 2024. By the time we get to 2028, I may be eating my words right now and be like, holy shit, I couldn't have been more wrong. I do not believe there is a feature set that Sony could flex with the PlayStation 6 that will make me want to just throw out my PS5 Pro and be like, I'm there. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's next gen, baby. I do not think there's going to be a feature set that does that. I think what I will see are games that do look incredibly good. They look amazing. But I will be looking at those games knowing, like, bro, I just played GTA 6 on my PS5 Pro. I just played Ghost of Yotei on my PS5 Pro. I just played Intergalactic on my PS5 Pro. These games are fucking mind-blowing. Like, what is the PlayStation 6 going to show me that's going to make me go, oh my God. This makes Ghost of Yotei not look bad, but, it's like, this looks even better. Like, I mean, like, so much better. I don't think that's going to exist. I think the game itself is what's going to have to sell it. I don't know, man. I could be wrong. Maybe this is where I'm like lack an understanding of where this technology is going in the next 4 years. But that's why I'm saying, like, Mark, you sold me on the PS5 with the SSD, the 60 FPS performance modes, the DualSense. These are all features that I do believe, even though most of the games were cross-gen, they still felt very substantial. Like, dude, the PS4 Pro was slow as shit, loud as shit, and the DualSense is, frankly, it just kind of stomps the DualShock 4, And the PS4 Pro was a 30 FPS machine. The PS5 is a 60 FPS machine. There are some major differences there that, while it might not be the PS1 to PS2 or PS2 to PS3 leap, it's still, in my opinion, a leap. This time around with the PS6, I don't know. Like, I don't want to, dude, you come out here flexing 8K. I don't care. Like, I'm just being real. I do not care about 8K. I mean, it's nice. Like, wow, yeah, that's great. But that's not going to get me excited. I mean, you can't go the SSD route again because we already have an SSD. It could be even faster, sure. You will have a DualSense 2, but what could the DualSense 2 realistically offer to make me be like, oh my God, this shits on the DualSense 1? This is what I'm saying. Like, Sony is in this position where it's like, dude, the one thing they could do, what Sony could do to make me be like, holy shit, this is next gen. 4D sound, bro. The one thing they could do is show me, here's Santa Monica's new IP. Been in development for like 7 or 8 years. Exclusively for the PS6, built from the ground up with the PS6 in mind. Check it out. That would make me think that's fucking next gen. That's what it would do. Like, I mean, just knowing that would sell me. But that's me, right? That's me. But that's the thing, dude, is like, are we expecting Sony to do that? Like, do we really think Sony's going to come out and be like, we're going back to true exclusivity? I think, you know what I think Sony's going to do? I think they're going to fuck with us. Just like they did with the PS5. I think they're going to pick and choose. I think they're going to come out and be like, yo, Bloodborne remake, only PS6. The next Ratchet and Clank, only PS6. Maybe Blue Point's game, only PS6. But, Spider-Man 3, yeah, that's going to be cross-gen and probably go to PC pretty quick. Wolverine, yeah, we'll have a PS5 version of Wolverine or PS6 version. I'm trying to think of other games. Like, if it is Santa Monica's new game, I don't think that'll be PS6 only. And I think what Sony's going to try to do is, like, keep a few select titles exclusive to PS6, at least for as long as they can, as a way to sell it. But I think like the greater but I see what I'm describing. What I'm describing is Sony repeating the PS5 gen, and I do not think they're going to be able to do that. I'm telling you, I do not think Sony will be able to do a repeat of the PS5 because it's like, bro, times are changing. Like, times have changed already. 4 years into the gen, they've changed. 4 years from now, 2028, it's going to be even more different. And I think there's going to be just a different expectation where it's like, again, man, Sony has to come out with the double barrel shotgun, and they only that's all they get, man. That's all they get. 2 shots at most. And you got to make them count. You got to make like you need to communicate the message like do you believe in generations or not? What is it? What is it? Is this an extension of the PS5 or is this a next gen? They're going to need to do that because I'm telling you right now, man, the PS5 Pro is pretty great. It's not, it's early, but I like it. I've seen some of these games and what they look like running on the PS5 Pro, and I'm like, I know it can be better, and I know it will be better with the PS6, but there are a lot of games that are going to have even more time to cook on the PS5 Pro. Games like GTA 6, games like Ghost of Yotei, Death Stranding 2, etc., and many others that we just don't know about yet. I really need to know, like, what are PS6 games going to do? Because the whole Ratchet and Clank teleportation thing was really cool when Sony showed it off. But that was like the only time we ever saw something like that. The ray tracing was nice, but I'm going to be honest with you, man. Like, you could give me path tracing, and as awesome as that is, it's like, I mean, I'll be on board with it. I'm not trying to make it sound like I wouldn't be on board, but it's just, I'm not convinced, in case you can't tell, that Sony's going to be able to convince me that the PS6, this is next gen. Like, this is a next gen leap. And that's why I'm telling you, I'm so fascinated. I'm so fascinated because it's like, if there's one person that I believe might be able to do that, it's Mark Cerny. I'm not trying to doubt Mark Cerny. I'm just saying I know what he's up against. I know what he's up against. I know what he's capable of, but I know what he's up against. And I feel like the day Mark Cerny comes out to reveal a PS6, I'm going to be going in with excitement. Hell yeah, I'm going to be going in with excitement. But I won't lie to you. I will be going in with, this is going to be a harder sell than the PS5 ever was. It is. For me personally, I mean, look, man, if I'm still doing YouTube at the time, which I assume I will be, of course I'm going to be a day one adopter. But like, more holistically speaking, I will know, like, all right, Sony, you only got one shot. Don't miss your chance to blow. I mean, I better be seeing Mark Cerny walking out to, lose yourself. Because that's pretty much what they're gonna, in my opinion, that's what they're gonna have to do. But the last thing I want to say before I read the rest of these super chats, I appreciate you guys waiting patiently. The last thing I want to say is, but all of that changes if at the end of the day, Sony's mission statement is, we're not trying to convince you anymore. Like, we're not trying to convince you need to get a PS6. I don't expect, that sounds so not Sony to me. I do not expect that, but I'm just saying, if people believe Sony is headed in the direction that they believe they are, like, this is where they're going, man, then Sony will make it clear in one way or another that, like, please be excited. Please look forward to this console. But yeah, we're gonna be everywhere too. Don't worry. You will be able to play our games. I don't think they're going to be able to do this kind of in the middle shit anymore. Because I think people are starting to realize, Sony, seems like you're starting to go to PC a lot quicker. You know, now you can get some trophies on PC. Now when I boot up my PS5, when I boot up my PS5, I see if I check the trophies, some games have PS5 PC. All right. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I'm just sitting on these super chats. Jerome, you're saying the Wii U died because people thought it was an add-on and not a next-gen console. It won't happen again. That's very true, and I would like to think Nintendo learned from that. I always said when it comes to the Switch 2, just call it the Switch 2. Don't risk naming it anything else. Don't do it. You're right. That was there was mass confusion there. Cypherpunk, you're saying Sony will have to keep up with PC level graphics and performance to stay at the low price. They've set the bar high for themselves. I agree with that. Yeah. Sony, I mean, if there's one thing that I think Sony and Mark Cerny did make clear with this new AMD partnership with the PS5 Pro and everything about it is they're trying to be at the cutting edge. How you do that at an affordable price point that a new generation console is expected to have or offer, again, the pressure continues to mount and pile up for Mark Cerny. But there's, I wouldn't want to have anybody else taking on this task. Kyle Say Stuff, you're saying which PS6 title do you think will change everything? Bloodborne Remake, bro. I'm not even kidding. I know I say that jokingly, but I'm not kidding when I say like if Sony, I feel like the Bloodborne Remake, Sony at some point in time realized this is a break glass in case of emergency situation. You can remake The Last of Us 1. You can do a director's cut of Ghost of Tsushima. You can remake Until Dawn and remaster Horizon Zero Dawn. That's fine. But that Bloodborne remake, look at them. I feel like Sony's looking at all the posts on the internet like, look at them. They will do anything. Oh, we hit the goal, by the way. So we will feed the beast when I finish reading these super chats. Thank you for that, guys. Love to see it. I mean, I think Sony just kind of realized, like, look, man, if all else fails, when we try to sell our next console, we will have that Bloodborne remake. I mean, if you want to talk about a game that could change everything, outside of Bloodborne remake, dude, I think it would have to be something like The Last of Us 3 or the third Ghost game or a new IP from Santa Monica or another big studio from Sony or maybe in after Horizon 3 a new IP from Guerrilla, something that's truly like we are making a true next gen game. It's fucking huge, it's mind-blowing, and it is exclusive to PlayStation 6. I think if they do that and they show something that really looks next gen in terms of the scope, the scale, the AI, the world itself, that could change everything. But it's as we're talking about hardware innovation, hardware affordability, next gen hardware, this is all happening in tandem with developers all trying to kind of chase that unicorn, it feels like at this point, where it's like, what is the next evolution of gaming? Like, what is it? Because right now I'm seeing Skibbity Toilet on Old Snake's back in Fortnite. That's what I'm seeing in 2024. That's a real thing, by the way. That's a real thing. I saw images of it yesterday, and I literally sat there just staring at the floor for a couple minutes. I'm like, what happened to gaming, dude? What timeline am I in? I sent it to my friend, and he was like, bro, what the F is that? I'm like, that's real. That's what that is. So I'm just saying, man, I don't know what the next innovation in gaming is, what the next revolution is. But somebody's got to be working on it. Cypherpunk, you're saying you would be disappointed if single player games on PS6 run at 30 FPS. See, that's another great question, dude. Like, Are any games gonna be at 30 FPS on PS6? I mean, every game we've seen revealed throughout all of PlayStation history has run in its reveal at 30 FPS because it can look the absolute best. Does that change this time around? I think it might. Mark Cerny was talking very heavily about how, yeah, people want 60 FPS now. Like, people practically demand, I mean, holistically speaking, people demand 60 FPS, even the casuals, seemingly. So I think the PS6 might be the first console where it's like everything you're seeing is running at a locked 60 FPS. But I don't know. They might not be able to. Like, if they're like, we're going to have a game that's showing you path tracing, they might not be able to. But they will sacrifice that because they want your face to be melted by how shiny everything is, you know? Decisions. Chartard. That name, bro. That name with the picture is something else. You're saying, just to put it into context, AMD will release the 8800 XT next year, projected to have 4080 super performance for $500. People who amortize the cost of a PC will get better performance longevity. So what you're saying here, again, this is where obviously Sony and Mark Cerny, as well as Microsoft, I would assume, but because the PlayStation 6 is seemingly further out, they know this. They know that, right? What do you do? What do you try to convince people like, no. Trust us, you're still going to want to stick with the console. Wait until you see the PS6. Or do you kind of submit to this idea or this reality? Not an idea, but the reality that, yeah, like good performance levels that reach a point of affordability that people will be okay with for years to come. You know what I mean? Like, because what you're describing, yeah, I feel like a lot of PC players, if like I can get that level of performance for $500, you're probably going to be set with that for many years to come. I would imagine most people, if you're not an enthusiast. This is where it's like, when do we hit the ceiling, man? Like, when does the market determine we've hit the ceiling? Is the PS5 Pro the ceiling for the console market? I mean, when I say ceiling, I'm talking about consumer interest, consumer need. There's been so many conversations about the PS5 and the PS4 this generation where it's like a lot of people just not moving on the PS5. A lot of people are. Does that continue? How do you continue that without true exclusives? Price, you think? Maybe. Cypherpunk, you're saying it. I mean, there should be no 30 FPS mode at all. Okay. I'm telling you, there's going to be. It does sound silly. It does. I can agree. But there's going to be a 30 FPS mode. The PS6 games. Bloodborne Remake is going to be shown off in 30 FPS. You already know it. You know what I could see Sony doing? You know what I absolutely could see Sony doing? When they show the first PS6 game reveal and it's running at 30 FPS, in small text at the bottom, not only will it say running in real time on PlayStation 6, but it will also say next to that, like, 60 FPS performance mode available on as well, or something like that. I could definitely see them doing that because, yeah, if they show a game running at 30, we've reached a point where people will kind of freak out. But if they get ahead of it and they're like, no, see right here, We're confirming it literally at the reveal. You can play this at 60 FPS. They might get ahead of it. But, I mean, we're talking about expectations for next gen, right? I think the expectation might be exactly what you're saying. No 30 FPS mode. Everything just looks amazing at 60, right? Okay, you're saying PC tech is advancing too fast for the console model. Do you think, okay, do you think we could see Sony, maybe Microsoft? I mean, Microsoft is probably more likely to do this just because I feel like they've done this in other areas with hardware like Surface and stuff. Do you think Sony could get to a point where they're just going to be like, we're not really doing 4 year, like they're basically releasing a new console like every couple of years, essentially. Like we're not waiting 5, 6, 7, 8 years for new gen in order to keep up and to continue to extract the most amount of money. Because that's the thing, right? Like as more people kind of settle in, oh yeah, I'm happy with the PS5 Pro. I don't really need to go to the PS6. Oh yeah, I'm happy with the PS6. I really don't want to go to the PS6 Pro or the PS7 or whatever. I'm good. I'm going to stay here for like the next 10 to 12 years. But there will still be people who want to move on. And so I don't know. I do wonder if like maybe the way Sony works this is like the PS7 needs to come out like 3 years after the like 4 years after the PS6. The reason being, it's not going to be a new gen. Everything will be cross compatible. The messaging and the communication will be totally different. The reason being because we know that we're not getting 75 million sales on the PS7. We will be striving for 50 million, maybe even a little bit less than that. The reason being because everybody settled in. And so we need to just try to basically get what we can. Like we need to just like extract as much money from the console base, like the most loyal console enthusiasts that are still willing, basically the people who bought the PS5 Pro is what I'm saying. We need to extract as much from them. I don't know. Then you could just make the argument Sony's already doing this with the Pro consoles, but I guess I'm just saying, like, if you're thinking about the PS6 or beyond, right? Like, I mean, how the hell do you communicate console generations? Because what you're saying is true. Like, PC tech is advancing, like, way too quick. There's no way, I think, well, I don't say no way, but it seems unlikely that the PS6 is going to come and be like, this is more advanced than the most cutting edge PC tech. That used to be kind of an advantage that consoles had back in the day, but not really anymore. Now they're just trying to keep up and not, price people out. So I don't know. Sony's facing a predicament, and I do not envy them because I don't know that I would know what to do. I don't know that I would know what to do. Maybe the reason why Sony priced, let's think about that for a moment. Maybe the reason why the PS5 Pro is $700 is not only to make as much money as we can, but maybe what we're seeing with the PS5 Pro is the future of how PlayStation is going to handle consoles. Where it's like it's very iterative and it's very expensive and it's only for a certain group. Maybe after the PlayStation 6, that's all that will be left. And so they just got to know how big is that market? How big is that market that of PlayStation players, of console players who are going to come out and buy this console at a very expensive price point where the returns are very diminished, right? Just something to think about. Kyle Say Stuff, you're saying if AI is our generation of the internet, what if PS6 utilized AI so much that they made games that dialogue will never repeat and more, etc.? Yeah, I mean, I remember somebody bringing this up before where they were like, dude, imagine AI in a game, like an open world RPG or even maybe not an RPG, but kind of like what you're saying where it is It's a single player game, but it has certain RPG elements. Like I think like something like Horizon. You think about one of the biggest things in Horizon is you're talking to all these people and all these different conversations are happening. Um, I mean, you're kind of going the angle of like every time you play, it's something different. The dialogue's never the same. It feels like real people, and it doesn't feel like pre-recorded lines. And you actually like don't know what they're gonna say. I mean, that is an interesting angle. It feels gimmicky on the surface. You know what I'm saying? Like it feels like one of those things that people would kind of like roll their eyes at, but you know we are talking about potentially very advanced, sophisticated AI that is going to be kind of creepy in a way. You know, it's going to be kind of uncanny and creepy. Um, that could be where the revolution is. It could be AI. And it's worth noting that when Mark Cerny talked about this partnership with AMD, um, he was not, you know, he was saying, yeah, the AI machine learning advancements that we're pursuing are obviously for graphics and making graphics better. But he did, and I think this was the biggest hint towards the PlayStation 6 feature set that not many people picked up on, or maybe some people did, but the way he kind of worded it was like, it's not just going to be about graphics. It's going to go beyond graphics. I think that was Mark Cerny's like very low key hush hush way of kind of confirming like exactly what you're talking about here. We're like, yeah, we're planning on seeing how we can make some crazy ass shit with AI and machine learning. Uh, when it comes to, you know, not just other feature sets, but maybe even games as well. And yeah, I don't know, man. AI freaks me out a little bit. I'm not gonna lie, it does. AI freaks me out a little bit. I mean, I'm trying to like imagine a game so real that it feels truly like indistinguishable. I mean, I don't know. Like, I guess it just comes. I guess it kind of comes down to like what does the market want? Like, what's your dream game? And I feel like you think about AI advancing to a degree because AI is going to advance at a rate it is. But I mean, we're gonna get to a point. We want the Matrix. See that's the shit that freaks me out because I think you're right. I think you're right. I think at the end of the day, like that's the end goal. Like I want to be able to like plug in and be gone. I'm somebody else. I'm somewhere else. You know, it's like there's something I feel like borderline dangerous about that. I think we're still a long ways from that. We're the Oasis. Yeah, we're a long ways from that, but you just we are I think we are seeing the very early days of like we're going to, you know, we're looking into AI. AI is going to start making its way into games and that's only going to grow at a rapid rate. Like that's just going to happen more and more and more to where like 20 years from now, I mean, what's that going to look like? Perfect Image is just like, please, just not a zombie game. I mean, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. How long, how far are we from, you know, how you go into the PlayStation store and you type in the name of a game, or maybe you type in the genre of a game, and then you see all the games come up. And then you look them over and you decide, how far are we away from you boot up whatever you're playing on, whether it be a future console, PC, whatever. You're in a storefront and there is a section, it's an AI generation tab. And basically you you can just kind of type in what you want the game to be. And I don't know how they would work this out with licensing and all that shit. Again, I'm thinking like kind of further future here. I'm sure a lot would be figured out. But basically you type in the game you want created and then it creates the game and then you pay for that. Like you make the game. Not you make the game, the AI makes the game, but you basically tell the AI what you want. And there will be a corporation, whether it be Sony, Microsoft, or anybody else, that basically, you know, you pay them for that. So it's like, when do we reach a point where I can input, I want The Last of Us Part 2, but Abby doesn't exist in this game. Joel and Ellie are the main characters once again, and Joel, like, I don't want to say he doesn't die, but, like, you know, there are like playable sections as Joel. And maybe, I don't know, maybe you just kind of input like what other stories you wanted to take inspiration from or something. I mean, the licensing, the copyright, I feel like that's where shit would break down. And I feel like that's potentially what would stop that future from happening. But I think what's more likely to happen is everything I just described, except we don't have any input at all. You know, I think what I just described is it's actually more likely that Sony or EA or Activision or Ubisoft or whatever, they're going to say, we're going to put the inputs in and then you're going to pay us for it. Like, we're going to make the game with the AI inputs. And I think at the end of the day, the developers are the ones that are kind of fucked, potentially, and the actors. But yeah, I mean, the whole idea of being able to kind of generate your own games, I feel like I'm thinking very far future right now, obviously. Maybe not. I don't know. Kyle Say Stuff, you're saying, have you seen that AI Minecraft game? It's truly crazy and dystopia. I haven't. But the way you're describing it, it makes me feel like we're not that far from this. Would you agree? Maybe I should look into this Minecraft AI game. Is it Oasis? Oh, that is what Oasis is. Oasis is a 2024 video game that attempts to replicate the 2011 sandbox game Minecraft. It runs entirely using generative artificial intelligence. The project, which began development in 2022 between the AI company Descartes and the computer hardware startup Etched, was released by Descartes to the public on October 31st, 2024. Oh, man. That's weird. I mean, I don't play Minecraft, but I'm like looking at these images and I'm like, that just looks like Minecraft. AI Minecraft is absolutely terrifying. This shit's already happening. Dude, I'm describing something that's literally already happening right now. Oh my god, this isn't the far future. What about Dreams, but an AI version? Oh, that'd be so cool. You will be able to buy a license for an IP for your AI game generator, which is why Microsoft and these tech companies are gobbling up IP. They can license the IP forever to feed our AIs. Oh, holy shit. Oh my god, I think that's completely right. I feel like I'm like not opposed to this. There's something horrifying about that though, in a way. Like at first it seems nice, and I still have more super chats to read. I'm sorry to keep you guys waiting. I do apologize. I got to say one more thing. I'm going to read the rest of these super chats back to back to back, and I'm going to get through them. But like, hold on one sec. All right. Sorry about that. I just want to say one more thing, and I'm going to read the rest of these super chats, and we're going to feed the cats and wrap this up because I don't want this to be an overly long stream. But I just wanted to say, like, the idea of being able to do what we just described, where you will be able to have an AI generator that is probably owned by a company, and then you buy licenses to be able to use those licenses to generate any game you want with any configuration. But the thing is, when we imagine doing that, we imagine a shitty outcome. We imagine a shitty game, but it's not. It's almost like, yeah, Naughty Dog made this. It's like that good. There's something almost kind like you talk about dystopia. Like, what happens when you can just make all the things you want? I feel like if you do that long enough, you're gonna kind of yearn for something that you can't make. So I think there will always be this kind of place for, like, yeah, I made this like my own version of The Last of Us Part 3. I made my own Last of Us trilogy. and I made the changes that I wanted to make, and I made it exactly what I want it to be, and it's the best version. I feel like even with that, it's like, but you're still gonna want to know. Like, I still want to know what Naughty Dog's Last of Us 3 ends up being. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. You're saying imagine MGS built completely to your sensibilities that goes on forever and is always interesting. It is enticing. It is enticing. It's a little creepy to imagine. I'm not gonna lie, because it's so. I feel like what it would truly reveal is how uncreative I am. Man, turns out I am a shitty writer. All right, let me get through these super chats. I appreciate you guys dropping super chats. I'm so sorry to keep you guys waiting. Sometimes I get lost in my own thoughts here. Digital Dude 25, you're saying, don't miss your chance to blow, LMAO. Please, that is what he says, right? That, let me see. Now, I just gotta know now. Yeah, he does say that. I'm sorry. I was just he says you only get one shot. Do not miss your chance to blow. Dude, for a moment I almost thought like don't tell me this whole time I thought that's what the lyric said, and it's not. All right. Thank you for screwing with me, Digital Dude. We have Rashdom V2 saying only a small percentage of hardcore PlayStation fans will care about day and date. Majority of PS5's base are casuals that play multiplats, and they won't follow or care as much as the hardcore. Sony will realize it and push forward. I think you're correct. I think that, look, man, I think that eventually all hardcore PlayStation fans, I think a lot of them already did ask themselves this question, but for those who are not thinking about it, they're going to be forced to ask themselves, like, what's the true reason you're here? Like, why are you actually on this console, playing games on this console? And I think a lot of people are going to just come to the realization that it's not just because of exclusives. It never really was. Like, that was always a part of it. Not going to deny that. But that was never the only reason. And I think they're going to be forced to kind of contend with that truth of like, huh. And that's the thing is like, yeah. And if it turns out that was the only reason, then you don't have to stay here anymore. And Sony's okay with that. And that's not a bad thing for you either. So, there was always this concern about what does this mean for competition, but we're already there, dude. We're already there. We're going to find out. So I do agree with you, Rashdom. I think that it is mostly a small percentage that would be upset. I will say, though, that small percentage, I don't think Sony underestimates the vocality of that small percentage. I think that they could be extremely loud, and they will be. And just like what we're seeing with Xbox, dude, where it's like Xbox just realized, or Microsoft just realized, listen, we know there's going to be a loud vocal minority that's really, really upset with us. We don't care. We're going to press forward, and this is what we're going to do. And as time has went on and Microsoft has made it clear, like, we're just continuing to go down this road, and the people who are kind of screaming about it are starting to slowly over time realize, like, nobody's listening to me. Like, I'm just wasting my breath now. You get what I mean? That's just how it's got to be sometimes. Digital Dude 25, you're saying since Naughty Dog is taking inspiration from Bloodborne for the next game, do you think we will have massive size enemies in Intergalactic? I do. Yeah, I think one of the most surprising things we're going to see from Intergalactic, I don't have any evidence to back this up other than what you're mentioning, where the inspiration from Bloodborne and Elden Ring, and the fact that it seems like it's going to be more focused on melee combat. I think one of the biggest surprises we're going to find out about Intergalactic is a main focal point of that game are going to be major boss battles, like large scale boss battles, um, which I think would be so cool because I don't think we've really seen that from Naughty Dog. I think if you played The Last of Us Part 2, there was that one section with Abby in the hospital, where I think that was like the closest we've ever seen to a larger scale boss battle. And I think that was a hint. I think that was also a hint of like, yeah, they want to do more of that. It's not a coincidence that, you know, the game that they said they, you know, inspired them, Bloodborne. It's not a coincidence that when they made The Last of Us 2 and they were inspired by that, they're like, let's do this giant monster creature, big boss battle. I think we're going to see a lot more of that. I do. And it actually sounds pretty exciting. Um, Cypherpunk, you're saying love Bloodborne, but people forget it only sold 7.5 million. I think the potential's there though, man. Like you're right. You're right, Cypherpunk. Like it's not like it sold like 18, 19, 20 million, but I think a Bloodborne remake post Elden Ring, I think that changes everything. I think a a from the ground up PS6 remake or even PS5 remake of Bloodborne with From Software plastered all over it, right? Post Elden Ring, from the creators of Elden Ring. I think that sells. I mean that's a big number, to be fair. 7.5 million is huge, but I think like considering we just heard that Elden Ring sold nearly 30 million copies, I'm thinking you are looking at an easy 10 million sold, possibly 15. No joke. Especially if they release it on PC. But yeah, I get what you're saying. Bloodborne has, I mean, it's sold well, but it has more like this cult status, cult classic status. But I think it can be more than that. Cypherpunk, you're saying be better than the lazy devs we have now. AIW win. Just be better. And Fred Vance, longtime member, 55 months. Fred, I think you're just 5 months away from getting that 5-year member badge, bro. Thank you so much for that. You're saying every generation becomes less knowledgeable in old trades that used to be common. Game devs are not immune from this if we do not share the knowledge. Yeah, I think that's becoming evident. One of the greatest examples of that I've seen in recent memory, Battlefield 19, or not 19, 2042. I'm getting the names. It was the last Battlefield. I think it was 2042. There were just basic fundamental things missing in that game that it became very clear that the development team that was working on this game was like a new generation of developers, not, a lot of the classic DICE team already left, or the ones that were there that were veterans. And they clearly didn't pass enough down because, yeah, dude, they didn't have a freaking scoreboard. Like they was just missing the most fundamental stuff that it's like, how does this even happen? And then they had to fix all of it, And it's like, yeah, that's a real thing, Fred. No campaign. Yeah. Unfortunate stuff there. I do want to just make sure I didn't miss any direct donations because sometimes the notification glitches out. Okay, no, we're good on that. Well, yeah, guys. So we are rapidly approaching the 2.5 hour mark. I think this is where I'm going to wrap up the stream. I am streaming a little bit later today, so I didn't want to like overextend it. Cypherpunk with another super chat. Thank you, buddy. You're saying maybe I'm just a negative person, but Bloodborne, an exclusive to PS4 with 117 million player base, to me is not good numbers. Well, I mean, I think I understand where you're coming from, Cypherpunk. I think that considering what the expectation was at the time, again, this was like 2015. All in all, I'm sure Sony and From Software considered that a big success. But I will tell you this. In a post Elden Ring world, because we have to look at it in the context of when Bloodborne came out, the Souls formula was, I would say, it was becoming more widely known and it was establishing itself. right? The Souls formula was officially, I guess you could say, acknowledged in a big way in 2011 when Dark Souls 1 came out. And so just a couple years later, like 3, 4 years later, we're looking at Bloodborne, which is continuing that, but it still didn't blow up. The Soulsborne genre was still in the process of growing. It really did take until Elden Ring for basically like the mainstream to realize, holy shit, this is amazing. That's why it's like mind blowing to me that Elden Ring outsold all 3 Dark Souls games combined and their re releases. That's nuts to me. And I'm like, damn, dude, it's a shame, in my opinion, that it took this long for people to kind of realize, because Elden Ring is Dark Souls gameplay, stemming back to Demon Souls gameplay. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is like, you look at those numbers now, and I feel like, I'll put it to you this way. If a Bloodborne today after Elden Ring only managed to sell 7.5 million, I think that would be a little bit spooky. It would be, because it's like, everybody knows From Software now. Elden Ring blew them up and put them way on the map, like right there at like the top spot. Prior to Elden Ring, when we just look at Bloodborne, there was Demon Souls and Dark Souls, And Cypherpunk, you're saying Armored Core only sold 3 post L from Soft. I get, what are you saying, like 3 million post Elden Ring? Yeah, but I mean, that's where it's like, Armored Core, bro. I mean, I don't know. I get what you're saying, Cyberpunk. There is always that kind of like concern. Like, are people blowing up Bloodborne and making it seem bigger than it really is? But I firmly believe that if Bloodborne came out right like today with a proper remake on PS5 and FromSoft was like even a little bit involved, I think it would easily sell 10 million plus. I do. I don't know if it could do Elden Ring numbers. I don't know about that, but guys, that is going to conclude today's stream. My throat's actually feeling very dry, and my voice is getting a little bit hoarse for some reason. I don't know. Maybe the air is just really dry today. But I do have to feed the cats, because you guys did crush the goal. Oh man, Luna's coming over here way quicker than Boss now.
Boasting read me. It's time to feed the beast.
Come on, Luna. Come on. Okay, she's being stubborn for some reason. We gotta feed the beast, Luna. Or where's Boss? Boss, are you even in here? Wow, Boss doesn't even care, dude. Is it because of the time I'm streaming? They're like, no, it's past snack time. I think Luna will at least eat some. They're like, it's too late for snacks, man. You don't think any FromSoft game will ever sell in Elden Ring numbers, but we'll see. I mean, yeah, I think if Bloodborne 2 came out and it was everywhere, last gen consoles, current gen consoles, PC, if it was everywhere Elden Ring was, I don't know that it would sell the same amount. But I think it could get closer than we think. I do believe that. It's too late for snacks. Speaking of snacks, I'm pretty hungry myself. Oh my God, now I'm getting the hiccups. All right, yeah. This is how I know I got to bring this to an end. Yeah, that's still hurting Bloodborne even today. I mean, I do wonder, you talk about Bloodborne selling 7.5 million on PS4 alone. I do wonder, how many units would it sell if Sony just released a port to PC right now? Probably a lot. All right, guys, that is going to do it for today's stream, though. Before I head out, I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in and hanging out with me for a little while on this Friday. I want to give a big shout out to everybody who dropped super chats. We had a lot of generous super chats today. A lot of you guys showing continuous generosity, and again, I just always have to remind you that for those of you who are dropping any type of fan funding, whether it be a super chat, a direct donation, a membership gift, or becoming a member, it allows me to continue to do this, and I'm very thankful for that. So, you guys are awesome. Will there be a Christmas stream? There will be a Christmas Eve stream. Yes, so be on the lookout for that on the 24th. We'll be doing a Christmas Eve special where we'll hang out. We've been doing that for the past couple years. It's been fun. So, but all right, guys, that's going to wrap it up. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and a shout out to Devil Shooter before I go as well. Devil Shooter does the timestamps. He does a great job, and I know a lot of people really appreciate it. So if you see Devil Shooter in the comment section with the timestamps, give him some love, show him some thanks. Did I cut the poison ivy? Not yet. I'm actually I'm planning to go out there sometime soon, because now it's cold and everything's dead, and somehow I'll still end up getting messed up, but I feel like it'll be a lot easier to start ripping that stuff down. And I don't know that I'll be able to completely control it, but if I could just make it not as crazy, stream it. Yeah, that'd be a hell of a stream. I know you would love that, Gaming Survivor. All right, guys, that does it. Please enjoy the rest of your evening. I will catch you guys back here on Sunday with another stream. And yeah, so, all right. Take care, everyone. I'll catch you in the next one. As I failed to properly end the stream. Just sitting here awkwardly.